This episode explores the ways that publications can differentiate themselves and stand out visually. We will give an overview of how publications are printed and expand on the printing terms and the possibilities of print, including papers and different printing considerations. We will also consider why print is still relevant today. The episode features a conversation with printing company Allegro Print about how they work with artists and what stakes and aspirations commercial printers have in experimenting with print. The key learning points for this episode are: what are the possibilities and limitations of print? Why is print still a sought-after format? We will also go through some print terms and technicalities that may be useful when speaking to printers or configuring your print publication. You have probably printed something at some point in your life. You may have printed documents at work, photocopied readings in school, or sent photos to be printed at a printing shop. Approaching the task of printing your publication for the first time may still feel daunting. It can sometimes come across as a very technical process with its own unique set of terms and considerations. We hope to share some of these commonly used terms with you today. Reflecting on printed matter, we have to consider the process it is related to: printmaking. Printmaking is the process of creating designs and artworks by transferring text and images, usually to paper. Printmaking typically covers the artistic process of creating prints that have an element of originality rather than the large-scale mechanical process of printing that we might associate with newspapers or books. The experience of print. While the internet and the move towards new technologies may have reduced the number of books, magazines, and newspapers that are printed, there still continues to be an audience for physical print. Print can also cater to a wider demographic across generations who may be more comfortable reading something physically, as well as those who are visually impaired and who may find printed text and tactile typography or braille more accessible for their reading experiences. The form of a book, taking into account its size and shape, paper stock, printing, cover, and binding, creates a unique way of anticipating and experiencing specific content. Whether the content is visually or linguistically based, or both, physically engaging with a book also becomes an experience of how different materials are laid out in space and unfold before you. This level of genuine personal engagement is also key to establishing a connection with not just the form, but also the content of the book. It is a key part of why printed matter and the book format continues to prevail today. Different aspects of printing. Moving on, let's go through the different aspects of printing, namely design process, binding techniques, paper, and printing methods. First, we have the design process that commonly involves digital software, such as Adobe InDesign, to plan and lay out the print publication. It may also involve more handmade methods, such as collage. Books can be bound by hand or through machine-bound methods for mass-printed books. Common types of binding are thread sewn, perfect bound, ring binding, and saddle stitch. While considerations of paper may be overlooked against seemingly larger concerns such as content, print quality, and color, different types of paper cater to different moods, tones, and tactile experiences. There are a few different types of paper, such as coated, uncoated, and hybrid papers. Coated paper has a smooth finish and includes a layer of coating with glossy, semi-gloss, or matte finishes that enhances its brightness, smoothness, or the printing process. With that smooth finish, it may be more durable and it will absorb less ink. This makes it less likely for the ink to bleed and is coveted for projects that require images to look sharp and sleek. Conversely, uncoated paper is without a layer of coating filling between the fibers and as a result is rougher and more porous. Images printed on it may have a tendency to be softer and less crisp, and the content of most paperback books are printed on uncoated paper. That is not to say that uncoated paper is without its merits. Its texture and sensation may be ultimately preferable depending on your artistic project. Hybrid papers feature a blend of characteristics for both and are also a favorable option. They present the best of both worlds. You may have heard the term paper grammage coming up before if you have visited printers or paper shops. Paper grammage is usually calculated by GSM, or grams per square meter, and it refers to the thickness of the paper. The higher the GSM, the thicker the paper. Most common printing paper for brochures, flyers, or home printing use would have a GSM that falls within 60 and 120. Additionally, there is also a consideration of texture, color, and strength. Some papers may have a greater sheen or translucency, while others may already be colored and appear more opaque. Also, not all papers are suitable for the type of printing or format you are looking for. When engaging with a commercial printer, it is best to consult them directly and clear your doubts. We also have to think about how you would like to print your material. To start off, black and white books cost much less to print, but some images do not translate well without color. If you decide to print your book in color, a consideration that you may have would be to reduce the page count or reconsider the type of paper to be able to meet your budget. If it is suitable for the images, you may also opt for monotone, which means a single color. When approaching a printer, you may choose offset, digital, and risograph printing, all of which cater to different effects, quantities, and price points. To start off, if you have a higher quantity of print publications, for example more than 500 copies, offset printing may be the option for you. Offset printing is a popular commercial method of printing based on lithography. It is a printing process that involves printing the image onto an intermediate surface, such as a metal plate, before it is transferred onto the final paper. As a plate with the specific printed image or text needs to be made first, there will be cost incurred for that. It also means that offset printing only makes sense if you are printing at a higher volume. The advantages of offset printing. Large quantities can be printed cost-effectively so that the more you print, the cheaper the price per piece. With offset printing, a large variety of paper types with custom finishes can be used, including special custom inks such as metallic inks and inks of Pantone colors. Most importantly, it also yields the highest possible printing quality, with greater detail and color accuracy. However, if you have a medium or lower quantity that is below 500, perhaps you would like to opt for digital printing instead. There are two types of digital printing. Firstly, inkjet printing happens through a computer-linked printing device that allows for the printed image or text to be created by high-speed jets of ink. Inkjet printers can work very well for photos and documents that are image-heavy. They can print finer, smoother details through higher resolution. Compared to laser printing, it has a lower cost per page. Secondly, with laser printing, the process happens through a light beam and toner, where the laser beams produce an image that is fused to your paper by heat. This technique can print high-quality text and graphics and moderate-quality photographs. Laser printers are also usually unable to print on a variety of paper types, due in part to the heating process that happens when a laser printer is in use. The advantages of digital printing: it will cost lower for shorter print runs and is inexpensive for black and white printing. It also works if you want a faster turnover. With digital printing, you are more able to print the amount you need when you need it. There are lower minimum quantities, which can be as low as 1, 20, or 50 pieces. Risograph printing. Another printing method that is also frequently considered is risograph printing, and this method of printing works for low to medium quantities, generally below 500 copies. The risograph prints one color at a time in bright, vibrant colors. Introducing more colors can create imperfections and misalignments, which give it its trademark organic look and feel. The print quality is also uniquely textured, and it may not work if you're looking for printing that is accurate and of photo quality. Risograph printers use a soy ink made from vegetable soybean oil. As such, the papers used for printing have to be uncoated for the ink to dry and adhere to the paper stock. On top of printing techniques that you may have to decide on when engaging with printers, there are also more artistic techniques of printmaking which have also been used in art-making processes. Depending on your publication content, you can consider relief-type printing and silkscreen printing. Relief-type printing refers to a traditional printing process in which the image to be printed is raised above the non-image area. Ink is applied to the raised surface, and the image is transferred to the paper surface by applying pressure. Silkscreen printing is a versatile printing process in which the image is created by forcing the printing ink through a fine screen of fabric or metal. Bright, opaque colors can be applied to a wide range of surface textures, including paper, card, cloth, plastic, and metal. However, this is an expensive process to conduct at low quantities due to the need to create frames for the prints. There are many possibilities for print that you can explore. Take some time to weigh them out and go with what is most effective for your project. Having thought through your publication, prepared the content, finalized it with your collaborators, and reflected on what kind of paper or printing technique to go for, the last step would be sending it off to print. The final file that is sent to the printer is usually referred to as the final artwork, or FA. We've prepared a small checklist with some considerations as you send your FA to print. Before sending it off to print, it would be very useful to do a manual test print to check for typos. When sending your artwork to print, specify key spreads that are crucial to review during the press check. Press checks are usually conducted with printers where a sample print is shown to you for review purposes. During the press check, it would also be good to check on the registration. The registration refers to accuracy of impressions on the paper occurring in the precise position as intended and specified. Look out for the sharpness of your printed material, overlapping colors, and the edges of images. Once the final artwork has been confirmed with the printer, it is finalized. Any changes on top of that will incur extra cost, so be extra careful. At the end of the day, with all the considerations that we've highlighted and that you are weighing out, it is important to give yourself time to really sit and reflect on them and to discuss with your collaborators. Do not feel rushed or pressured to finish. It is your publication project and the culmination of your time and labor. So it's important that you take the time and space needed to properly see it to the finish and give it the attention it deserves. We will now be moving on to the conversation segment of this episode with Merlin Tay and Yao-Liang Ho from Allegro Print, a printing company with a niche for producing and printing many art publications. The conversation will shed some light into the considerations that printers have and the collaborative process of working with creatives.
Welcome to the conversation component to Art Books and Beginner's Guide. This episode looks into art books as printed matter. Today here with us, we have Yao-Liang.
Hi everyone.
And Merlin.
Hi.
And they are founders of Allegro Print. Actually, a few days ago, I was just here doing press check and we were calibrating the color together. I'm actually quite curious, what else do you do as one of the founders of Allegro, as well as Yao-Liang? Yeah, what do you all actually do on a day-to-day basis actually?
Actually, this is exactly what you say. Actually, what I do is that I will meet all the clients who wants to do printing. So I will provide print consultation. We'll go through the specification and go through the paper and then your requirements of the clients. That's basically what I do. Actually, for Allegro, we are husband and wife team. So I take care of all the book production, and Yao-Liang does all the other non-book production.
Basically, I daydream.
Elaborate.
Okay. Try to find new products, something very creative, and it's like looking the need in the market in the print industry, and how we can actually fulfill such needs. So coming out with new ideas, or we actually along the way we created a few brands that we found so-called the blue ocean. We found that someone is not doing this, that it could be a potential demand in that. So that's why I daydream quite a fair bit, search around, talk to people, and try to create some model to see whether this kind of thing works or not. So I like to look at machines and finishing machine, printing machine, different printing materials. Yeah, and of course I do support in looking out for servicing client.
Okay. Okay. How long has actually Allegro been around?
Allegro since
1999.
No, it started with Allegro as a printing company started in 2002. But then
2002.
But we started with color reproduction in 1999.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's how it started.
So I guess really just wanting to know actually color reproduction. So you all started from there. Maybe give us a sense of how Allegro started and why actually did you all actually start Allegro? Yeah.
Many years ago I was an intern I was an intern in the industry.
Okay.
So
print industry.
Yeah, it's in the print industry. In the color reproduction, I actually I worked in a color reproduction company that was one of the biggest in Singapore then. So after my internship with them, then I continued to work for them for seven years. Yeah, but then that job requires me to travel about more than 50% of my time. It's mostly overseas job. So then with them for 7 years, and then I decided that I didn't like the traveling anymore. So I want to look into the local market. So I joined a local printing company. Yeah, so that decision wasn't really a good one. So wasn't I didn't really quite like to work in a local printing company. So that's why it leads me to start on my own. Because with me that time when I went to this printing company, I actually persuaded about 4 of my ex-colleagues to join me in that company.
Okay.
So then unfortunately the working experience and it doesn't really fit us. Okay. So then I decided to do it on my own. That was in 1999. Okay. So we went back to 1999, then we started, because that's where our strength is. We will continue to do color reproduction, color management for client, for printers.
What is color reproduction and color management?
So color reproduction is in the past there's no digital, right? So it's all it's all slides and transparencies.
Yeah.
So what we basically do is to reproduce all those photography shots in slides and trans into digital information. So that's why we have those very analog scanner that we will scan them and then we'll reproduce them and then we'll color manage and then we'll listen to the requirement of the curators and then to color correct to the books that the printers and the publisher wants. So that's how the business started.
Yeah.
And then we start to provide this type of service for the printers in Singapore. Because in the past, most of Singapore printers don't have the color separation department. It's always an outsourced process. So when we first started that, we were doing that for like about 2 years, and then we constantly have problems of get into a situation where printers say that our files are not good and things like that. That's why in 2002 we decided to do the print ourselves. That's how Allegro was started. That's the case. So we, instead of surrendering all the files to the printers, we decided to take on the printing ourselves.
Right.
That's how we started.
We all means also including Yao Liang. Like, when did you come in the picture? Were you also an intern in the printer?
No.
Actually, he was never. He's never a print person.
I'm a dreamer, remember?
Right.
He's not a very technical person. So, but as the business grew, because he's in the corporate world, he works for the telco company, and basically he's like a weekend father. He's always traveling, and he only comes back only on the weekend.
Yeah.
So as the business grow, and then the kids are growing up, I find it so difficult to manage the company, the family, and then the 2 growing boys are going to school, and I find it very, very difficult to manage.
So I was basically more of a telco man since graduation, working for a local big umbrella, the red umbrella, for more than 10 over years, and my job was to travel everywhere. So I'm always not in Singapore, so it comes to a point of time where our boys are growing up and they hardly see their father. So it was a decision that we have to make. So I kind of quit because it's not possible to ask Merlin to quit and close down the business because the colleagues here are no longer like employer-employee relationship. We are like a family. So we don't really quit on our family members. So I can quit because they had too many people there. They don't really need just one more person. So I came back to the business and honestly, when I came back, I also noticed something very different. From a big MNC where we have 10 over thousands of colleagues over there, came to a very local business. It was a big culture shock to me at the same time. But when I look back, I also was evaluating this traditional printing business. Printing has been in this industry for over 100 years. So from a very engineered environment in telco to a very traditional business, when I came back, I got a bit of culture shock. Of how things is being done, and I also see how things were being transformed in the telco industry, where people are using highly digitalized method to do things over there. But I look back at printing, it's still very traditional. So I was sharing with Merlin, it's like we need to transform, we need to change. That's where my dreaming comes. So along the way, we try different things and try to make things to keep abreast to technology. So that's why I do a lot of trying to create things over here.
Which is also good because I think because I've been in the industry for very, very long, so sometimes you tend to be a bit myopic. You just only look at the production, and I'm also very keen in production. So I really cannot think about what I'm going to do in the future, looking ahead of what to do, because I really have no time. And then my passion is really into book production and talking to clients. This is what I enjoy doing. So that's why when he comes in, I thought that it's quite a good time when he comes in. It's a time where the company needs to progress as well, because if not, then it will just get stuck somehow, and then you just cannot progress.
Jumping now to the present day, what do you think led the business into one that is actually frequented by a lot of creatives and designers today? Looking around, there's a lot of people do come to you to do quite complicated books, including myself, right? So actually,
I think probably because it started off, we are curious about things. We like to try. We are very experiential. So when people like yourself come to us, I remember the book Left to Right, you want to do something very challenging. So it's not a matter of whether it can be done or cannot be done. We just have to give it a try. So we play around with machines and play around with different methods and try to make things possible. So I think with this kind of attitude, dare to try, willing to try, very curious. So sometimes when people approach us, the first question they ask, can do or not? My answer is always, I don't know until I try. Whether it's possible or not possible. So I think because of that, creative people like you guys will start to ask questions like this, can do or not.
Right.
So, and yeah, that's why I think it's true all this. And also we have creative people, designers, we brainstorm together. Yeah, maybe they have learned something overseas, they've seen it be done before. So again, the most important question is that we are willing to try. We are willing to try. And not only because as an owner we are willing to try, our production people, our production team, they're also willing to try. They enjoy doing things that is a bit out of the norm. Because if you do normal printing, brochures, flyers, they get bored after a while, nothing special. But every time you try special items like this and that, they enjoy the process of creation. And when they see something birthed out of such creation, they feel pride also. So they are also willing to try. So I think it's probably in the culture. So everyone willing to try.
Has the print landscape changed in the past 5 years? What are the trends and changes that you have observed?
We see a decline, in terms of volume. And we can probably put them in the commercial terms, right? There's a lot of replacement. Last time we used to print a lot of like commercial stuff, things like coupon, flyers, promotion items. But over the past few years, you know the evolvement of technology, all the e-books, e-coupon application. So like overnight, all these coupon promotion items just disappeared. Everything went into the apps, onto the phone. Or even certain publication like annual reports, kind of stuff, commercial printing, also kind of suddenly disappeared because it's like just download from email. Download from web or your PDF.
Is it like the past 5 years or it's been going on?
It has been going on, and it kind of this decline accelerated a lot, and it really declined quite tremendously. But we see another trend that's coming up, which is self-publication. A lot of people are really, instead of approaching established publishers to publish their books, a lot of them are moving into self-publication. They come up with their own articles, come up with their own art book, photo books.
Mostly self-funded.
Self-funded.
Art book, or sometimes they manage to get grants here and there. So I think we see this up and coming actually.
Yes. It's something physical.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of art books that you've done.
Yeah.
Maybe you could share with us some of your personal favorites.
Okay, I think we want to share the Land Foundation. Yeah, I think these are the two very interesting annual report that we have produced for Land Foundation. Okay, because I think the client is willing to explore many types of substrates into their book production. So for this particular one that we did 2 years ago, they are willing to, for this particular one, they are willing to try an acrylic cover. So this is one of the very interesting book. And then the designer, besides this cover, they actually inside the book there is also a very rounded exposed spine, which is very unusual as well. Because usually most of the book are very square, 90-degree exposed spine, but they wanted a rounded one because the book looks, when it's rounded aesthetically, it looks nicer as well. So and then they also explore the glow in the dark ink, but now it's too bright, you can't really see.
Of the lights.
So this is a quite interesting book. And then the second year when they do this, they approached me that they wanted something that is durable. They wanted an envelope that is durable. So we went ahead to buy in Tyvek. And then because we know that Tyvek is very durable, but we wasn't sure whether it can be printed or not. So we just went ahead to buy the material and give it a try. And it works. So this envelope is actually made out of Tyvek, and it's impossible to tear this envelope. No matter how you do it, you just can't tear it. And then the interesting thing is that because we mass mail this about 300 copies to different addresses, so every envelope is customized. So every address has a Google map to that particular address.
A geolocation.
Yeah.
A geolocation.
Yeah. Okay. And then this book is also very interesting. it's a die cut of Lian Foundation logo throughout the whole book. So this book actually can be very challenging for us as well because we need to register every single page, perfect registration to get the logo right. Yeah, so this is one of the very interesting 2 books that we have done so far. Yeah.
Maybe I can add on. This book actually helped us to
really.
earn the award of Asia Best Printer.
Wow.
So it's of course it become one of our favorite books.
The way the designer wants.
One of my favorite books, we always jokingly say we like to print rubbish. So it's like, wow, what rubbish? I think one of the favorite books is actually this book, Rubbish. It's very creative, it's very fun. Okay, it's not only fun making this book, but it's also very fun working with the person that's designing this.
Right.
There's quite a bit of discussion and a lot of things that we explore because of the special finishing. And it is not just the book itself, there are a lot of other things within the book that comes along with it.
This brings me to my next question, which is kind of the collaborative or co-creative process that you have as people who have some ideas and the knowledge of print, and how some people will come to you who have a certain kind of idea of what they want. And kind of there's always a negotiation and there's a cost element, there is practicality and the actual production capability, of every project that comes on board that you all have. Are there any specific books that you all have that you would like to bring up and raise about some ideas that were very co-creative in that nature?
Yalang like to buy machines.
Oh.
Toys, guys like toys. You buy cars, I buy printing machine.
He likes to buy. That's why when he bought this machine to print, then I will find ways to sell the service.
Right. Okay.
So sometimes
I do try also.
So sometimes it's okay, like you buy and then say, okay, I bought this machine, quite interesting, and then I say how to use it. So sometimes we have to go around.
Buy first, figure out.
Yeah, literally. Sometimes I have to tell you to stop. It's very tiring running up behind you. If you buy first, you go at that exhibition.
It's so fun. Let's try. You can try, I can buy, I can print iPhone, I can print this.
But sometimes really when you buy it just doesn't work. It's another but then we
quite
try.
different, right? Oh no.
But
it's not in the public now.
Every year they want to try a new material, so we will. That's actually motivates us to look for new material. Then when we have clients like this, right, it kind of motivates us to look for new material and we try. And then sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Or sometimes the idea comes from client as well.
Right.
So yeah.
You won't try, won't know, right? So buy more machine.
So how important is actually paper in art books? What are some considerations that you would like to suggest to artists when they are thinking about what paper that they would like to use?
Okay, I think for
Paper expert.
I think for me, most importantly, I think I usually will ask the client how do they want the book to look like, whether it should be glossy or they want it matte. And sometimes, most of the time, some clients don't, especially some clients who are not very familiar with paper, they will actually bring a sample that they want to, they want to follow and things like that. Then I'll go through the series of paper with them. And then the next question I ask them, how do they want how accurate or how real they want it to be, as close to
Colour-wise.
the color, in terms of color-wise, how close they want it to be to the digital information. So some clients are not some designers are not very particular. But some they are, especially photographers, right? When they are very particular about their photography, shots and things like that. And then I will tell them, okay, then you have to go for a coated paper. Then because that when all this on the coated paper, because it has a wax on top of the paper, so all the
Shiny.
shiny and things like that. So all the digital information, all the photography shots, right, everything will pop. But then now the trend is, right, most of the photographers don't like coated paper. They want it mostly matte or uncoated.
Right. Because it's very shiny and
then they feel that
waxy.
Yes. And then now the trend is that most people find that coated paper is very commercial, like a magazine paper.
Yeah.
So most of the people don't like coated paper. So then they always like uncoated paper. They always bring uncoated sample. there's no shine to it, right? So it's very the nature of an uncoated paper, everything printed already, most of the time it'll be very muted.
Right.
Yeah, but that photographer want the image to pop. And then yet they still like uncoated paper.
Right.
So sometimes it's very difficult to have a compromise. But fortunately, over the years, right, the mill also understand the requirement, the market demand. So that's why we have this hybrid paper. Hybrid paper is very lightly coated, which means the color retention is not as high. It's not going to pop like the glossy, waxy paper, but then the color retention is still good compared to the uncoated paper, which is muted. Yeah.
So in some way or another, it is very similar to uncoated in terms of how it feels.
Yes.
But it's a hybrid in the sense that it's slightly coated. So what happens is that it does also
The
take
color,
up. The color sits onto the paper a bit better.
Yeah, that's right. So now, so that's why it depends on the budget of the client, and then depending on how they want the book to be.
Right.
So then we'll go through a series of paper with the paper merchant that with a few paper merchants paper, and then depending on the budget, and we'll decide on the paper together. Yeah.
And then also over the years, because we have different requirements, so we tend to do a lot of test print. So we work with paper merchants, especially if they have new introduction of new brand or new paper. They will bring it to us. They know that we do a lot of artworks, and then they say, "Can you test?" So I mean, we are more than willing to test because we also want to try different texture, different kind of paper. If not, it will be same old. All the books will look similar. So we want to try different things. So the books will be quite different.
We constantly will go to paper merchant and then try different paper because. Especially when paper merchant bring new paper, I will usually want to try because I will see how is the color retention of the paper, and then because paper after printing, right, sometimes it's very interesting. Once when it's printed, it's actually very glossy and it's very nice. But then later when the paper rests, right, over a day, then the color will change. So sometimes it's very important for us as a printer to understand the nature of the paper, how over time how the ink react to the paper. So that's why we constantly do that.
Especially those uncoated ones where the ink actually kind of sits.
Especially those uncoated one or those hybrid paper. Then sometimes they will because we will test all the readings and we'll see how much they change. Then we always benchmark against coated paper and this normal uncoated paper and see what's the difference. So this is something that we constantly do.
There's something also about uncoated paper that a lot of artists like. It's really because of the kind of tonality of the colours of the paper.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Because all papers, uncoated paper come in very different shades. I think sometimes it's really depending on the nature of the publication. So depending on what the client wants as well. So sometimes we will just have to try, and then as much as possible, sometimes we would like client to try many papers so that we have the opportunity to print many types of paper.
Share with us your paper dead stock project and how artists can actually utilize that project.
Okay, I think for many years, every time we have this leftover remnants, or we call it off-cuts, we tend to donate it out or give it to churches, Sunday school, or organizations that run children's program for the kids to draw, to doodle, to do illustration. But we really have so much paper that they say stop standing. We don't have enough space for all this paper. So we came along this thing called off-cut.
Literally, it's off-cut, so we just call it off-cut.
Initially, we think what name to give leftover remnants or whatever. But I said off-cut.
Yeah, that's literally the
It's just off-cut.
Yeah.
Okay, so they call it a paper thrift store. So whatever is being left off, like some space here and there, we put in designs from there, and we created stationery like this. Okay, we create stationeries. So these are all from the off-cut papers that we produce from books or from magazines.
Because we print a lot of art book, right? So most of the papers that are left over are branded. They are not those generic paper, are all branded paper. So most of the time I find it a waste to throw them away. But then sometimes it's so difficult to keep them, and it's like bits and pieces here and there. So that's why this idea come about. We actually wanted to do this for a long time, but then it's very difficult. I mean, day-to-day operation, right? It's so difficult, and especially when it's your own project, it's already very difficult to start. It's because of the lockdown, right? Got nothing to do, then okay, we can do something. Because we totally cannot operate for the 2 months. Yeah. this thing come about. Yeah.
So, what are some print methods that artists can consider utilizing?
I think in the print industry, it's typically whether when you want to go to like when you want to print, it depends on the quantity that you want to print. So if your quantity is means above 100 copies, then you probably have to go offset printing. Offset printing is just how should I say? It's like a bigger machine, right? Bigger printing machine.
Literally.
Yeah. And then it prints at a very fast speed. That's why you need to go. And then that is offset printing. And then if you are talking about like a few copies of books or one copy of one copy, then you usually have to go digital press. So that's digital printing. Yeah. So these are I think commercially these are the two. Of course, there are many other methods, but these are the two commonly used methods: offset printing and digital printing.
So, is it specifically related to quantity of print that you would suggest a digital or offset solution?
Yes, I think it's really depending on the quantity, and we'll discuss with the client and see what they want to, how many copies they want to produce. Or sometimes, especially for self-publication books, sometimes if the client is not very sure, so usually I will tell them that maybe you just print a few copies digitally and then test the market and try to sell them going through the crowdfunding platform. Yeah, then if they are successful, right, when they get a lot of funding already, then they can go into mass production instead of like printing the bulk of it and then trying to sell it. Yeah.
What are some examples that you have printed that are kind of crowdfunded?
This book, this magazine, Minor. Okay, this is one of a crowdfunded magazine. So once they reach enough, then they say, okay, now I can do this volume, this quantity. Yeah, and this is
no, that's just reverse.
That's reverse.
Yeah, reverse. I already collected this amount of money. How many copies can I print?
Right.
Yeah. So they already have the fund. They just want to know, confirm the volume that they want. The other one is a photo book, right? So this one how many print? 5 sets, right?
500 sets.
5 sets for the initial.
Initial is 5 sets. It only printed 5 sets to
test it out.
Yeah.
Or try out in the market.
No, I think he sell it through Kickstarter.
Yeah.
That's definitely digital print.
Yes. The first 5 copies definitely digital.
Yeah.
Then after that, he got the funding and then he went to print 500
copies. Yes. And so apparently the digital platform helps. Yes.
But it still gets back to print.
Yeah.
So, what are some suggestions that you have as printers for artists who may want to make their work stand out? Like any suggestions that you have based on the kind of machinery that you have been bringing in?
Yeah,
I think the most important, besides the machine that we have, right? Because I find that the creativity and the creation of the book, yeah, I think that is important.
The
concept. Yeah. So I think if anyone wants to print a book, right, if they are not designer themselves, maybe I would suggest that they get a designer to design a book. But it actually makes a lot of difference because this, okay, for example, this book, right, the initial one was designed by the photographer himself. Yeah, but when he got the funding, right, he actually spent money to get a designer to design the whole packaging. So the whole, from the digital to the mass production, right, to the actual product, actually is very, very different. I find that is important. And sometimes we see that the creation coming from a very professionally designed book, it really stands out from the rest.
So I am down to the last question for today. What is one piece of advice, and we can have one from each of you, that you would like to give to artists who are intending to start their own print project, like making their first art book? What is one tip or some kind of advice that you would give them? Yeah.
I always say, remember to do 3 and then bleed.
I think using the proper software.
Right.
Because we have so many clients who come to us, right? The file is not properly done, so we would have to spend a lot of time educating the client, and then sometimes when it's not properly done, the book actually, frankly speaking, the alignment is going to be very off. But I cannot like go in and then try to do the adjustment. That's also not our job. Yeah, so I think a proper software, that means to know how to use a proper design software is important. I think that is in terms of book production, I think that's the most basic, I guess.
I think sometimes you're excited. Oh, let's create a book. Let's do a book. Then you forget the fundamentals, the initial setup of the bookmaking process. Until they do it so nicely, it's like, oh, I forgot 3mm bleed. I forgot to do this. I forgot to convert RGB to CMYK or whatever. Then they try to reverse it and then they delay the entire thing. So I think back to the basic. When you want to create something, an art book,
set the foundations right.
Set the foundations right. Back to the basic.
Actually, sometimes we are very shocked. There are books all done already. In publisher, can you imagine? So that is quite shocking. Because they spend a lot of time, 100 pages, but they use publisher to do it.
Right.
So when we receive the file, then we tell them, sorry, cannot use. There are a lot of things that cannot be converted and things like that. So I think this have to be back to the basics.
Right. And it's usually, when they engage you, it's usually the Adobe programs, which is InDesign, and PDF.
Correct.
If they want to use other software, but they must know how to convert to a PDF, print ready file.
Yeah. And there has to be bleed, the 3mm bleed.
That is very important.
What about you? Is there any tips that you would like to
like
advise?
I said earlier, I think for a book to stand up, I think the aesthetic of the book is important, because that is the first impression. Before you go into the content, but how will people in the public generally pick up a book? It's really the look of the book, how it stands out from the rest of the book. So I think it's important.
So I guess either if you are confident of your capability to do that, or if not, maybe hire someone who can co-create with you to develop the outcome. And as printers, you all feel that from the array of books that you all have, that brings the best outcome for art books.
That's right.
Cool. Okay. Alright, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, everyone. See you. Bye.
Thank you for watching this episode of Art Books, A Beginner's Guide. If you've enjoyed this series, we would also appreciate it if you can fill in a feedback form that can be accessed through the QR code or link. We have also compiled a list of titles or texts that have been referenced or consulted on in the episode for your reading pleasure. See you next time.